right, on today's episode of Behind the Armor, we're going to talk about how to know if a man is a valued man in today's society. Today's podcast, we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to start off with an opening question. And it's going to be, what makes a man truly valuable today? Is it his income, his influence, his appearance, or even something much deeper? So the first one we're going to do is character over status, right? So what does that mean? Meaning your character is revealed by what a man does when no one is watching, right? So whether that's integrity, honesty, or even humility, right? So sometimes, success may earn attention, but the character earns trust. Meaning, if you have a good character or you're a good character, you earn the trust of your peers, loved ones, etc., right? But if you have status just means, whether it's money or whether it's you're doing something that you're good at, whether it's sports or whatever, right? You're good at. That's what earns you a higher status. That's what earns you success in some cases. So here's a key point to notate. Your reputation is what people think about you. Your character is who you really are. All right? I'm going to read that to you one more time. Your reputation is what people think about you, and your character is who you really are. Okay? All right, another one. He takes responsibility. In today's society, some men don't take responsibility of their actions. Some of them just, blame others, blame situations, blame their upbringing, even blame their childhood, instead of taking responsibility of their own actions because they made the choice. They did what they needed. They did what they felt was right at the time, right? So sometimes you got to own your mistake instead of blaming others, right? Sometimes not even sometimes, all the time, you got to just learn from your failures and keep growing. And in some cases, you're learning in all types of relationships, whether it's a friendship, a partnership, even work relationships, right? But at the same time, you got to keep your commitments and you got to follow through to your word. That's what makes you a valued man, because if you're able to take accountability and responsibility for your actions, then you're able to be trusted. You're able to be, The next one is he lives with a purpose, meaning he has a goals, he has ambitions, he knows what matters most to him. His life is guided by values, not just by chasing money or the approval of others, or even in this case, society, right? Social media. And obviously he doesn't seek to make the attention in a negative way. He sees to seek attention in positive, impacting ways, whether it's through his work, family, or even the community he's, working with or working towards to, right? All right, the next one. He also has to treat people with respect, right? You got to show kindness and respect regards, of someone's background or position or however they look, right? Because, some people judge a book by its cover and they're going to feel some type of way and be like, oh no, that person is whatever, right? But it doesn't matter. You got to put the needs of others more than yourself. So that's more important. You got to lead with humility and confidence, right? So that's what's always, a good thing to notate. And here's a key point for you guys to know. A man's character is often revealed by how he treats people who have nothing to offer him. I'm going to do that one more time. A man's character is often revealed by how he treats people who have nothing to offer him. All right? All right, the next one is How is emotionally, how, the next one is he emotionally mature? Meaning, does he understand and manage his emotions? Does he communicate? Is he honest and is he respectful as well? And he doesn't confuse emotional control with emotional suppression, right? And also, and is he willing to apologize and make things right instead of just apologizing just to apologize and hey, let's just move forward? No. If you apologize and you make things right and whatever you both agree on, then that just makes it that much more substance, right? That makes it more realistic instead of just like, okay, this person's not going to change. They just said sorry or they just owned up to their mistake. But what are the actions they are doing after the fact, right? All right, next one. He builds healthy relationships, meaning he invests time in his family, his friendships, his partner, right? You also listen more than you speak. You know, you create trust through consistency and honesty. And also you understand the real strength includes vulnerability, right? So that's a very, very hard one for most of us to really grasp because yes, we understand the real strength that to be vulnerable, but do we do it? That's the real question. Are we really vulnerable when it really matters? Because when it really matters, sometimes we shy away from it. Sometimes, traumas come back. Sometimes, other things that don't matter just come to the forefront and we just shut down. So you got to be okay with being vulnerable, whether, it's with friends, your partner, your family members, even a stranger, because showing vulnerability as a man just means that you are that strong and you know yourself more than anybody else. And you know that nobody can put you down, right? All right, the next one. He continues to grow in all aspects in life. He never believes he's finished in anything. He continues to grow. He learns from mentors, books, social media, podcasts, experiences, and even feedback, right? And also, he welcomes correction without letting pride get in the way. That's a very important one to notate because pride usually gets the best of us. That's what we're taught when we're kids. You can't let nobody tell you anything. You got to learn on your own. But sometimes, you had to be corrected. Sometimes you got to know when you're overstepping boundaries, when you're doing too much, right? All right. And here's a question that, I like to ask myself sometimes when I'm in a situation like this. Oh, when was the last time you changed your mind because you learned something new, right? Meaning, and this is what this is how I'm going to answer it. The last time I changed my mind was because, I got to learn something new. I can't just stick to old habits. I keep doing the same thing over and over again. And what does that mean? That's the definition of insanity. I got to change my mind. I got to change my approach in any type of, situation or even relationship. Because if I keep applying the same solution or the same, um, if I keep doing the same thing with everything else, then and I'm expecting something new or expecting a new result, then I'm not gonna get the answer that I need or even the solution that I need because I'm using my old habits, my old solutions, my old process of elimination, right? To do something that's new. So I gotta broaden my mind. I gotta open my mind. I gotta figure out, hey, you know what? How can I approach this situation or this problem in a different way instead of how I used to? All right. Next one, how he serves others, meaning you look for ways to help others rather than always seeking recognition, right? You use your strengths to encourage and uplift others. You also understand that leadership isn't about service. Isn't You also understand that leadership is about service and not power, meaning you're being a leader so that you can help others that are in your situation or that were in your situation when you were at that in that point of in your life, right? Because I'm pretty sure you can find a situation, a moment, a year where you were down and out and you wish someone could help you, right? You turn to a book, you turn to a podcast, even turn into a book or even turn to a relative, right? So that's what you got to do. You got to take the knowledge that you've gained and that you've learned and, help others that are around you, because that's what I'm doing as well. All right. And last one is always got to save the best for last, right? You got to leave a legacy, whatever legacy that is. You got to make a decision that positively affects the future generations, right? You got to want to be remembered for your character and not just your accomplishments, right? Because your accomplishments anybody can do. That's easy. But it's just how you approach those accomplishments, how you achieve them, because that's what's gonna matter more. That's what's gonna stay in people's minds. And also you're gonna be like, you know what? I like how that person, moved. I like how that person accomplished those goals. They did this, they did that, right? So that's how you leave a legacy. All right, and here's a question for you guys to think about. If your children or community described you years from now, what would you hope they'd say? Right? Think about that. All right, and here's just a little side note, for some of you that want to see some signs or you want to know. So here it is. Here are signs of a valued man from what I've learned, from what I've, got from my experience and from, basically me. All right. So signs of a valued man. He keeps his word. He takes responsibility. He respects others. He stays humbled while remaining confident. He manages emotions well. He is dependable. He protects without controlling. He keeps learning and growing. He lives according to his values, and he makes the people around him better. All right. So those are the signs of a valued man, in case you were wondering. All right, and here's my closing message. All right. A valued man isn't measured by his paycheck, his popularity, or his title next to his name. He's measured by his integrity, the consistency of his actions, the strength of his character, and the lives he positively impacts. At the end of the day, the greatest measure of a man isn't what he accumulates, it is what he contributes. All right, and that is it for the podcast. Make sure to stay for the Q&A. All right.
Okay, so now on to the Q&As. The first question will be, what qualities make a man truly valuable?
So for me personally, I'm going to say honesty, transparency, your integrity, right? Because let me see the other one. I have one right here. Your discipline and your emotional maturity, right? So I'm going to repeat that one more time. Your integrity, your accountability, your emotional maturity, and your respect, right? Oh, and your leadership service and your leadership. Those are the ones that I feel that make a man truly valuable. Because if you have none of those, or you have, well, let me rephrase it. If you have those in any of those orders, in the sense of you have purpose, you have respect, you have emotional maturity, you're able to, assess certain situations accordingly instead of just acting on emotions, right? Because when we talked about our last podcast, we were talking about how your emotions dictate, how you're going to move in life, how your decisions impact, your relationships, whether it's with your partner, your family member, or even with your work, right? So that's why I feel like those, and from personal experience as well, that's what I feel is a little bit more challenging in some cases. Does that make sense?
Yep, I guess if I had to put one in the top, it will be emotional maturity. So the next question will be: do you think society values the right things in men today?
Do I think? Honestly, not really,
Yeah, I was gonna think the same thing.
right? I was gonna be like, no, society doesn't value the right things. They value money, status, social status, how many followers you have, how many, things that don't have, what's the word I'm looking for? Things that don't have much substance, right? If that makes sense. Like, yeah, you can have a lot of followers. Yeah, you can have a lot of likes. Yeah, you can be an ambassador, an influencer, etc. But at the end of the day, who are you? You know what I mean? Who are you as a man? Who are you as a character? Society values the wrong things, the negative things, the non leadership things, right? They value a man that is toxic. They value a man that speaks down to people, down to women. All these extra things that really don't matter in that case because you really want to, what's it called? What's the word I'm looking for? Society really just makes blows up the negative and makes it oh, if a guy's like this, like that, toxic, he puts you down, that means he loves you, that means he cares about you, that means he's this. Is like, when in reality it's like, no, like, he's just a manipulator, he's a narcissist, he's all those things that you should not look for in a man, right? But that's just my opinion, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I guess a little bit more on that is that I saw one time about that, and maybe it's related, maybe it's not, but something like you just mentioned is, for example, when let's say a woman goes into a relationship and it's like a stable relationship, right? It's like he's honest, responsible, all the good things, but she feels bored,
Yeah.
so she doesn't feel like confident in that relationship. And then it's like the question is like, what was your previous relationship? It's like, oh well, my ex used to tell me how much he liked me and how much he misses me, but then he stops and then he acknowledges again. Is like, okay, you're not bored, you just do it to the unknown, to being inconsistent.
Yeah, they like that unknown part. This
Uh-huh.
the part where, oh, you know what, he's gonna surprise me with this. Like, always, it's like, no, you want a man that is gonna, know what he wants, his purpose. He's not gonna be a toxic. He's not gonna be, manipulative. It's like, because they want that bad boy type, man. But in reality, he provides nothing. He provides no substance. He doesn't even provide a future for you.
Yep.
Even though he says he would, he won't.
Yep.
He doesn't provide the healthy future you would look for, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
the dead men are usually boring, but they make the money, they make the houses, they are better than the man you are looking for, if that makes sense.
Yep. And basically, they tied it to being bored because it's like you're not worrying about anything. So it's not exactly being bored. It's just that your mind doesn't understand what stability is.
Yeah, because he wakes up, goes to work, he puts food on the table, he does what he needs to do, and he comes home and he repeats the same cycle. Whereas some women, they want that constant, like, spontaneousness, right? But it's like, sometimes that's not how life is.
Mhm.
But right, that's why we got to change that narrative.
Yep. Anyway, society doesn't value the right things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so on to the next question is how can men build a legacy beyond money and achievements?
It's a good one. How men can build a legacy? Really just by, how they act, their character, right? The main thing is their character, how you treat people, how you are as a person, how you don't expect anything from anyone. You just want to help the person, or the generation behind you. I always think of, just by reading it or just by hearing it as well, is like, think of, a brother, a sister, a little cousin. How would you want them to remember you by, right? You want to be like, oh, my brother, he's 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 calm. He doesn't let, any situation, get the best of him. He handles everything accordingly. Even though he's going through, financial situations, he'll still find a way. He doesn't do anything bad, or he doesn't do anything illegal, right? He handles himself in a manner that most people wouldn't or couldn't handle because of whatever situation, right? So that's how I view it as, because at the end of the day, we came into this world with nothing, so we're going to leave with nothing, right? So why worry about money and status and achievements when all that's just going to stay there, right?
Yeah. And on to the last question. What's one quality every young man should develop?
Oh man, that's a good one. There's so many. Let's see. What is one quality every young man should develop, right? I'm gonna have to go with integrity. And the reason integrity for me is basically it's the foundation that you build yourself off of, the blueprint of who you are as a man, because without integrity, you're no one. You're basically confidence becomes arrogance, you're so confident in one area or one subject or one thing or whatever, but you become arrogant at it. You become like, oh, I'm the best at this, but are you the best at that? And then that's where you're less than, it's like, who cares if you're, you know, good in sports, but are you a good person in life? Right. You know, success can be empty as well. Without integrity, your success can be empty. Yeah, you can be at the top, top of the food chain, top of the, you know, business and whatever, you can be the best at your career, but without that, it's nothing. Who are you without that business? Let's put it that way. Who are you without that title? Right? You can be nobody. It's empty, and also your leadership skills too. Your leadership skills can lose credibility because at a certain point, you're just leading to nowhere. You're leading people to nowhere because you're leading yourself to the top while you're leading others to benefit you instead of being a leader to benefit the masses, if that makes sense. And also and also relationships as well, you don't know how to be in a relationship without trust. You lose trust easily because of your past or without all that, right? And if you have integrity, people will trust you unknowingly. Like, hey, you know what? Without shadow of a doubt, just trust that person because I've trusted him my whole life, right? 'Cause, it was just like back in the days when our parents were, there. It's like, hey, you know what? I got the grocery store. Yep, he's a good guy. I trust him with my life. And you're like, as a kid, you're like, what do you mean? And he's like, you'll know what I mean once you grow up. And you're like, okay, I guess. And also, if you have integrity as well, your character remains steady throughout your life. Whether you be a successful person or you're not a successful person, because you've built your character in a way where people can see you as an equal, right? Instead of less than or better than. It's like, even though he's a successful businessman, he still doesn't act like one, or he doesn't throw that title around. He's just who he is. It's just because he built that. So that's why, to me, I feel integrity is something that I would like the younger generation to develop and really know, because we've lost that. Nowadays it's just like status, social media, money, you know what I mean? Oh, I have this, I have that, but it's like, really, who are you outside of all that? If I were to strip all that away from you, who are you? Make sense?
Yep.
All right, and that is it for our podcast. Tune in next time.